Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Unearth. I'm really excited to introduce today's guest, who is Talent Gutu. She is a counsellor and she has over 13 years experience working in a mental health organization. And before I get into it, I actually want to say that I struggled with the name because where we come from, if you're Zimbabwean or maybe African, an older person, you don't refer to them as talent. It's either you put maybe anti-talent or, mamncane, and all that. So I don't know how you feel about that, but did you have any issue with me referring to you by your first name?
Actually, many people know me as talent.
Okay.
And I'm sure the person you spoke to told you about talent. That's probably it has something to do with the profession itself. Because normally when you are working with people of all ages, you do not want to create barriers. So the name is good enough, and then they always decide what to do with it. Just like you're saying now. Others would put mom talent, others would say auntie, but I'm very comfortable with my name.
Okay.
I think it's a lovely name. And I also think it suits me. That's what I always tell people, that I'm very fine with it. So feel free to put whatever suffix or prefix that you wish to add there.
Okay. All right. I think I'll call you maybe Aunt Talent. that's what other people
Sounds okay. Sounds okay.
Before you came here, I did have a conversation with you, and we do have a tradition here at Unearth where we ask our guests to bring something that they feel represents their womanhood. I'm not sure if you remembered to bring something today.
I did remember. In fact, I actually struggled with trying to identify that one item. But it also helped me to kind of reflect on who do I think I am? What is it that I think is kind of my niche, or if I can use that word. So I came up with this.
An elastic band.
An elastic band. Because I feel somehow I identify with it. It's flexible. It can change shapes. It serves a lot of purposes, and at the end of the day, it also kind of, one of the purposes is to stick things together or hold things together. I think I'm saying so because, for a start, if you're a woman, you are kind of socialized to believe that you should be able to fit into anything. So as you grow up as a young girl, it's actually it's instilled in you that you have to multitask. So from as young as 6 years old, you know you've got responsibilities and you can't complain and you need to be perfect in doing them. So up to the time now when you become a mother, aunt, sister, all those things, if you're a woman, you're expected to fit in all those shoes. And people have so many high expectations of you, you just cannot make excuses. So it's as if people think or look at you as something that is so flexible, that doesn't break, that should bend, it should go as far as somebody wants to stretch it, and so on. And again, in my line of work, you realize that when you work with people, you cannot choose who you work with. It's whoever comes. And as they come, you are expected to, I don't know,
accommodate.
You expected to, if I'm working with a child, at that moment, I need to be a child too. Like get into the shoes of that child and see the world from their perspective. And then immediately they go out and an old woman comes in. So my language needs to change, my mannerisms need to change. The whole conversation is supposed to somehow suit or fit in with the person that is in there. And people cannot imagine that you can't do it. So all my life, all the time, this is how I'm working. So of course you do realize, however, that if you stretch it too far, it could break. So somehow you need to be at that stage or at that space where you do feel that this time I'm going to breaking point. I need to make some changes. So that is exactly how the life of a counselor, mother, and all that works.
And I think like also what you said about the limit and the breaking point, it's also important that each of us knows where to slow down,
how far you can go, and then when you feel it, because we're all very lucky the way we have been, call it the way we were. How do you say it? When God makes us, okay, the way we've been made, we do have some signs. Somehow your body will tell you that you've gone too far, you need to stop. If it's the mind, it will tell you this is too much, you need to take a break. So the elastic band will sort of a reminder of how far and how you cannot exceed your limits. So this is where my identification with this piece or this item comes from.
That's gives me a lot to think about, and I think also the viewers as well. So I want to talk about your journey into the profession that you're in. You mentioned that you were a teacher before, and now you've 13 years in counseling. How did you get to that?
That's an interesting question. I've always, when I'm sharing with people, I always say it's more like a journey experience. Where you are going that direction and then you find yourself in another. I never even knew anything about counseling when I was growing up, when I got into the world of work. It's a phenomenon that was not common at that time, and I'm not even sure whether there were colleges that were offering any courses in counseling. So I was a teacher, like I said. When I finished training, I was deployed in the teenagers' schools. Okay, so I think it was around the time HIV, where HIV was wreaking havoc, and then people didn't know what to do. So there were problems of bereavement, there were problems of sicknesses, there were all sorts of things. So somehow the government came up with the idea that maybe we need to introduce this counseling. Because in a family, you'd lose almost everybody. And then you've got kids that are left on their own with broken hearts, with all sorts of emotions, and there wouldn't be any immediate help. So this would obviously show in schools, where you get in your register as a teacher, when you are checking out on whose parents are away and what they're doing, then you discover that there's quite a number of kids in your class that are orphans. So there was a subject, a court guidance and counseling that came in, and we didn't understand it. There was a lot of resistance, and nobody wanted to take it up. Because remember, if you do not have knowledge about something, you become pretty negative about it as well. So I was young then, out of college, and pretty too. So the headmistress, I think, somehow thought maybe the kids would identify with her. I had lesser periods than the others, so I then got the load. So you'd see 2-3 classes a week for guidance and counseling. But there wasn't counseling that we're doing, it was just basically teaching children about HIV. But in the process, you discover that, no, these kids got problems. They'd come and share with you. But because I wasn't trained, I didn't know what to do with their issues. And I'm afraid to say I did some damage to some other kids. Because when you do not know what to do with somebody's issue, you tend to share it in the wrong spaces. So a child will come to you, tell you their problem, you share it with the next person or in the staff room, and the next thing, there's police that have come to school, the parents are called in, and then the next term the child doesn't come back. So I then developed an interest to get training so that as I work with these children, I do make a positive impact. That's when I started to look for, people that could offer that. There was only one organization at that time that was training people in a certificate in counseling. So I did that one. And look, I'm not going to be modest about it. I was one of the best students. And that kind of inspired me. I thought, wow. So I can do this thing. And then I went back to school, energized, and I'm saying, I'm taking up a degree in counseling. So the headmistress thought, wow, you've lost direction, what's wrong with you? What are you going to do with this counseling? Don't you know that Ministry of Education doesn't recognize it? But it wasn't interested at that time because I thought, after all, teaching was, to me, I was there. I actually planned to stay there for like 10 years and then find something else. So where I had studied this counseling, and this is an NGO, so they invited me over. They wanted a training officer, someone who would come and run a project for people living with HIV, training them in basic counseling skills. So yeah, that's where everything started. So I worked with those support groups, and then that's how the talent name maybe got known. Because I worked a lot for 6-7 years, and this means you are training all those groups around Bulawayo. So by the time you get finished with the training, everyone thinks this organization is talent. Because whenever you tell them I come from this organization, you must be talent, It has taught me to be humble, because that's one characteristic that a lot of us do not possess. We actually brag about being nasty. No, they want us. I've heard that phrase a lot. So it has also taught me that people are the same. We are all equal. Whatever happens to us at the end of the day, we also face challenges. Whether I'm big, I'm small, I'm rich or poor, we also go through life experiences in a similar way. So you kind of respect people now. When you look at someone, I also have learned not to judge. Because that's one big area where we are all struggling with. People are so judgmental out there. And there are so many things that we fail to do in life because we fear we'll be judged. And there's so much you want to share, but you think, if so it's about, looking at somebody and appreciating that when they behave like this, they've been through hell. It's something that we have never considered. We're always there to condemn. Why do you do this? This is your fault. How would you life you had listened? But have we ever stopped to think that, at least one thing that counseling has taught me is that man is good. Man is born good. If I see you behaving in an unbecoming manner, I should never blame you, but I should blame the environment. I'm saying, when they do this, it's because the environment has corrupted them. So the idea is to check the environment, not to check you. So e-counseling helps you to acknowledge, the way people behave. And you're saying, when you see her do this, something is wrong with the environment. And then you try and fix the environment. You don't fix the person. So I have also learned to listen, because that's one huge characteristic of a counselor. You can't be a counselor if you can't listen. And again, if you look back, when you went to school, primary, high school, you would be taught how to speak, how to write, how to read, but nobody teaches you how to listen. So we tend to be very poor at listening. And when you read those that are fundis in that area, they would tell you that we are very selective when we listen. We choose, I want to hear this, look out for Muzwa. And because of that, we miss out on a lot of things. People don't just use words when they speak to us. The body language speaks more. So that is maybe the takeaway from my profession that I have tried to master. I know I can never be perfect, but I'm able to hear what you say and hear beyond those words. Because if somebody says, look at tata, are they really saying tata? Even the itonia corner, even the facial expression tells you something different. So I've learned to listen. I have learned to take time before I actually react. For example, we can talk about something now, something that's really whether shocking, painful, or otherwise. But I'm able to remain calm for some time before we revisit the subject. Because I have learned that if I'm too quick to answer, I may be irrelevant. I may actually make things worse. So I want to think I have improved in the way that I interact with people. Well, I don't know whether my kids will agree with that. But I want to believe I've made some strides towards interacting with people, being able to interact at any level. If wherever I am able to fit in, because I'm saying, okay, if I want to be able to make a point, I need to be at the same level with the people that I'm interacting with, which I think is very useful. It's worked for me actually so far.
As you're speaking and I'm sitting here, I'm wondering if you are reading my cues, my body language.
Actually, it's not natural. It's very natural. Until you look at somebody and you say, okay, are they talking to me? Sometimes it doesn't come there, but there's what we call follow-up listening in counseling. So counseling iyakufundisa to clarify. You don't what do you call it, to make assumption about something and then I make an assumption and then I clarify. I forgot to warn you that I talk too much. So okay. I've been told that a lot. Yes.
Okay, and when we're talking about the impact on you personally, I want to go into a bit personal, into your own experience.
I can see that smile. Yes.
Have you yourself struggled with any, deep issue where you needed counseling, and how did you go around that?
Actually, they say when you look at stress management, they would tell you that to be without stress is to be dead. So it means as long as you're alive, you have to go through some kind of mental health problems. I'm trying to think of, yes, I can actually relate to that one. I got a baby when I was young. I think I was 21. And I'm not sure whether I was actually ready to have that baby. So 21, I was married and I had a baby. And I think that was the time when I thought I really struggled with I don't know whether I can call it depression, because depression would sound a bit too deep. I didn't know much about mental health, and then, remember, I hadn't studied it. But if I go back to that time now, I'm thinking, that time was a bit heavy. When now you become a mother and you think, nah, that wasn't my plan. And then you kind of get stuck. because you're not sure where am I going now from here. Remember, as you grow up, you've got some expectations, some dreams. So you are hoping that one day you become something. Then you think, now at the time or at the space that I'm at, am I ever going to achieve anything really? And I think I struggled with that, call it postnatal depression, when I was trying to find my feet. And I was trying to accept that, look, I'm a mother now. I have to appreciate that. I love the baby, it was a pretty little thing. But then the problem now was, because of you, I am stuck. I am supposed to be heading some direction, but I need to be like looking after it at that time. And unfortunately, because I hadn't done counseling, I didn't know that I could talk to anyone. You know, where you get some kind of forum where you can actually talk, because the space is free and private and you can empty out. So I think I carried that around with me for like 2 years, because I became a stay-at-home mother at the age of 21 for 2 years. And I think that was the time when I matured. Like I had to very fast and say, okay, I'm here now. I need to pull myself together and then do something. So that's how I found myself in teaching. So I was a French teacher for 10 years before I then ventured into counseling. So when I work with people, I think I appreciate what it means to be mentally loaded, where you feel there's this heaviness that you carry with you, where you really need some space, but you can't find it. So I don't know if I hadn't done something after the 2 years, I'm not sure what would have happened. Because with mental health, you need to somehow break the cycle. Otherwise, if it continues forever, that's where you become, they call it what, psychosis? Yes. That's where you find people have a mental breakdown. That's where you find people are looking for comfort in other things like the drugs and the alcohol and stuff like that. So yeah, it's very uncomfortable to be in that space. That's for sure.
Wow. And I mean, now you're a counselor and you have, all this information about mental health and, but who counsels the counselor?
We actually do have our, we call them supervision sessions, where every week we sit down as counselors with the supervisor and you kind of pour out. But the supervision one is more about offloading people's issues that somehow you've carried with you subconsciously. What they would call in that language secondary trauma. Because somehow when you're working with people, you cannot run away from getting entangled in their issues. Remember, you're human, and the issues that they bring to you sometimes are not so far from your own experiences as well. You're talking abused children, I've got children too, and sometimes without realizing it, you could actually replace the client in front of you with your own daughter and think, that could be my child. People bring heavy stuff, like things you've never heard of, like you can't even imagine are happening to anyone. And this is where you discover that after a while, you need to kind of, get them off. So how do you do that? You share with other professionals, and then somehow they would give you, whether you call it tactics, techniques that you could go back and work on. And then we have debriefing sessions. Debriefing is more about cleansing yourself, because like you say, we also have our own lives that also interfering with our work. You are there as a counselor, but you're also going through a divorce. You are there as a counselor, you're also going through a loss. You've just lost a husband, and then somebody comes in, they want counseling for a very similar issue. So we do have our own individual counseling sessions with other professionals. Okay.
So now I want to go back to the Zimbabwean context.
Mm.
And you've been in this field for 13 years. And I'm wondering, is there a change in the trends of the issues that people are facing when you first started and in 2020?
Definitely is. I think if you look at, I don't know what you could say about Zimbabwe. In some contexts, you would say, it's a transition period from blah blah. But ours is like a roller coaster. There's never a particular, period in experience that we say, okay, this one is over, so we go on to the next one. We are kind of merry-go-round. That's where we are. But you'd find when I started counseling, the issues were mainly related to HIV, breakdown of families. They were related to relationships, when people have now tested positive, and then there's issue of relationships, issues of treatment, what do they call it in art? People were now in that art program, and there was all the energy that was required to help them survive, like go through all that. And then that phase kind of improved because people got back their health, and then life continued. So when that happened, they also joined the rest of the crowd that had left the country to look for pastures, green or whatever color. Then we had a new phenomenon where kids were now left on their own. So there was issues of alcohol abuse, drug abuse. Most of the clients that would come were referred by the schools because they were failing to manage these children. Then there was a time when there was too much money. I think so kids were holding on to too much money. And then because of that, they were wreaking havoc. Then there was a time of 2008 also came with its own issues. So it's always something new. Every time you don't know what you're waiting for or what you're expecting. But like I said, oh yes, there was a Gutu party. Right, that one.
Yeah, I remember that.
The Gutu parties also came and took everyone by the storm. So, and there was we received a lot of clients during that period. Sexually abused, violence, and stuff like that. But it's always, up and down. But again, there were those that will always be there, and domestic violence will always be there. Because whatever problems are, the people always try to solve it in a very violent manner. Yeah. So I think Zimbabwe is a unique situation in the country. Yeah.
And on our way here, we had a conversation. I feel like this is something very important to talk about.
Okay.
And you mentioned something on first aid.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you talk a bit more about the first aid and counseling?
Yeah. That one I coined it myself. So you won't find it in the books. So yeah, we did notice, especially this one came during the HIV era. We noticed that people are suffering because we are very poor at communication. So what do I mean by that? You could live like you guys do here, okay? But you'll find that you can't help each other, especially in terms of the mental health. Why do I say so? We can actually identify that someone is going through stuff, but we don't know how to approach them. So what do? We hold our little meetings in corners. So we kind of train people to look out for each other and say, okay, I'm not going to train you to become a professional counselor because that's not where you want to go. But I could give you some tips on how you could help each other. Just to talk, because we believe in counseling that talking is a therapy. You know, once you've shared with somebody, for some reason, especially if they've lended you an honest, genuine ear, you feel like somehow there's a little bit of something that has been lifted. So we encourage people to learn first aid in counseling. So what do? We would obviously sensitize you on what counseling aims to do. Counseling aims to give you some power to handle your problem. Because when you have a problem, somehow you feel powerless. So my talking with you or to you should give you some energy. So when we train in first aid, we say, okay, you should be able to give this person some energy. Why do they need energy? Because they need to stand up and work for their issue. So we also teach you some basic skills. What is a basic skill like? How do I start a conversation? Because we're very poor at that. In so many instances, I've met people in town and they've said something and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, do you realize what you've just said? I met someone in town and said, so I stopped and thought, and then, hi, girl science.
What were they meaning?
Like you're too fat, you know? Or someone else show hi, something. And they left. And you're thinking, do you realize what you just done to my self-esteem? So we're so careless with words.
Yeah.
Even if I wanted to ask you something, you know, I notice you do not look yourself. There's obviously an approach. Sometimes I ask, do you mind if I ask? It's personal. So there's a mosaic. But I've already prepared you. What I'm going to ask something personal. I don't just look at you and say, how? Because when I do that, you become defensive. Because that's naturally how we are. We're always trying to defend ourselves. So basic counseling skills will teach you how to choose your words. It's just about choosing words. For example, I could say to you, we always to listen to challenge yourself. You know, people have a way of just throwing words. So basic counseling skills, those techniques is what we teach you. How to start a conversation, what are the most important issues that you are looking out for. You shouldn't judge me, you don't accuse me, you do not take over my issue, you know, those kind of things. So that when I have a conversation with you, it should make you grow in your situation. When I'm done with you, you should sit down and say, yeah, but I need to plan away to miss it. So that's the first thing I'm talking about. When someone approaches you and say, I can use that word, don't you? You have been raped. So when you should know how to respond. Okay, so we will teach you how to keep calm, how to calm this person down, and once they are calm, there's so many things you can do. Give them water, give them a cup of tea. You know, you've done that, the bag, and then also acknowledge what has happened to you. Must be painful, is painful, I'm sorry about that. It's something that people do not know. You see that a lot even as in Spain, you know, people come and say they want to come and but they say nothing. You know, they come there and say, and when they leave, they think they've made you grow. They've actually done nothing, absolutely. So basic counseling skills is teaching you how to empathize with somebody, get into my shoes, but get out. Because I think the problem with us is you get into my shoes and you stay.
And then you stay.
Yes. So when we get into my shoes, you see the world from where I'm standing and you think, then you get out. I'm sorry about your loss. uzwanjani kodwa. Because that's all people want to know. Ukuthi you are with me. So yeah, but I must warn you, counseling is not an easy job. It's very heavy, it's very taxing. I did say to some gentleman, he was offering me a cup of tea. He said we drink that a lot at work. Because you are so drained after a counseling session, you need a cup of tea to kind of rejuvenate yourself before you go into the next one. It's heavy, it's people's lives, and these are people personal issues that they hold very close to their chests. And they come and tell you with the hope that somehow you can, some miracle would happen and then the situation will be changing. So they trust you so much, it scares you. But how does someone entrust me with so much information? And they believe it's going to stay safe with you. You see, I've got so much passion when it comes to I speak the whole day.
No, I could listen to you the whole day as well. And I'm really finding it interesting when you're using the real life examples of it. You know, we deem it as normal. And it's always like it, and we go and we feel like we've done what we should.
You're so proud of yourself. So next time you go, if someone loses someone, please go there and say something useful. Yes. And then ask, is there anything I can do to help? Exactly. Or even just call and find out, how are you doing? I just wanted to check on you. I know namhlanje kunzima sibili. Ngingakuphathisa njani? What is that I can do? Because this guy just telling me, look, I don't even know what to say. That's being honest. And I think a lot of people will be happy with that. I mean, was I really don't know what to say. I feel I'm just, I'm hopeless, I'm useless. So I said, no, it's okay, just be me, it's fine. So the thing is now. Yes.
I feel like I've had a counseling session. I'm learning so much from this conversation. I think we can say we've wrapped up our conversation, and before we go, maybe you can leave us with one message from you.
Yes, the one message that I leave with you is that talk about issues. Talking about issues helps. Where there is discussion or dialogue, there is there's no suspicion, there's no speculation, everything is out in the open. Because when we do not talk about issues, it means the busy here, speculate on each other. Maybe so helps to put people put things out there in the open. And once something is out in the open, it means we can deal with it. Yes. And then next time you invite me, we must talk about suicide. Because that's another issue that is also pretty hot when people don't talk about issues. That's where we normally end up. But otherwise, thank you for having me. It's not always that I get invited to, come and share such experiences on such platforms. So I feel very honored. I hope it's not our last interaction. And then I must also share that besides the counseling, we'll also offer some talks. We give talks to groups of people, whether it's churches, it's, kind of thing. Because sharing, when you say sharing is caring, kind of thing. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for coming, and talent. And thank you for joining us. And I hope you got something from this conversation today. I know I did. Hope to see you in the next episode. This is Unearth.